Good afternoon, geographers.
Good afternoon, Miss Cannon.
Okay, quickly I'm just going to go through what we're going to do today. So we're going to start by returning to last week and looking at that framework we were looking at in the 4 quadrants about the, what did we decide to go with? Pluses, minuses, benefits, challenges, migration, and challenges. Then we're going to look at some immigration stories and place them on this framework. We are going to go back and examine those big questions that have been framing our entire migration unit. And then we're going to introduce an exciting activity in the end. So as I told you before, for the first part, I do want you to take this down, and you can either do that on your devices if you have a way of writing in 4 quadrants, or you can do it on a pen and paper, whatever is the easiest way for you to do. So that's all the writing I'm going to do on the board for right now. But I want to hear what you guys, what do we remember from last week? What are we going to put in the different sections?
Different challenges and benefits of leaving country.
So where should we start?
I guess the learning the love.
Okay, so the benefits of migrants leaving a country. What do we remember for this section?
The migrants can come back with certain skills they obtained from the host country once they finish their work there or something.
Great. Bringing back education and new skills.
Remittances, so the country that the person left would receive money because the person that left would be sending home money that they're making in the country they left for.
Great, that's one of our biggest ones, that word remittances we've been talking about. It should definitely be in here. The big questions that we've been looking at are, why do So why do people migrate, and what are the impacts of migration? What, with the chart we just looked at, what kind of question does this help, would that help answer?
I think you could probably answer both of them because with why do people migrate, you can use like push and pull factors. I can give you examples of that, and what are the impacts of migration? You can see here of the leaving and host countries, like benefits and challenges.
Great, so you've got two really good frameworks. And we list those push and pull factors will really help us look at why people migrate. And that chart we just looked at will really help us look at the impacts of migration on the different populations, which are the stakeholders. So I want you to really think about these questions as we watch. We're going to watch about 5 minutes of a different TED Talk than we watched last week about a woman telling her own families and her personal migration story. And I want you to think of how these come up within her story. So I think we're going to watch just a little bit. So we're going to look at Tan Lei's story and think about it really quickly. I want you to think about it in terms of as geographers now. So as geographers documenting a story, she's not going to say necessarily answers to why did I migrate? What were the impacts of migration? And she really was telling her own story from her heart, using her own language. But now thinking, as the geographers that you are, how do we document Tan's story? How do we answer some of these questions? Any ideas?
Yeah, I've got one here.
Why do people migrate? How would we answer that using her story? Why did she migrate?
Well, it's like kind of like forced migration in this case because of the political things that were going on in her country, so she was pushed out. Yeah.
Great. What were those political things? Think a little more.
It was the Vietnamese War. So it was like there's a lot of different cases of forced migration and war, like all over the world.
Pushed out. This was the push out. So that answers kind of her story of why she migrated. Thinking now, what were the impacts possibly? And we might have to use some of her own background knowledge to think about this one to extend beyond her story, but think about her story.
Well, there was the challenge was racial tension. As she said, when she got to her school, people were saying mean things and like writing it on the walls.
Okay, so what we are going to be doing next is looking at documenting migration stories ourselves, each of you individually. This will help us wrap up this unit, and I really want you guys to be able to think. We started our journey with migration at the very beginning by looking at your own migration stories, the migration stories of your classmates, and looking at those from a real personal place, just so I can lagged in. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move and start to look at migration stories as geographers and document those. So take one, pass it back. You get to choose the migration story. And then we are going to use a voice thread, which I heard you guys have been using in biology,
Yeah.
as a way of presenting this. So you're going to, what we're going to focus on today is just thinking about what story you want to use, and then starting to do a little bit of research on that story to make sure you've got the geographical terminology and knowledge to really look at this as geographers.
How would we, like, if we did the case study from the text, wouldn't it have to be like on a group of people?
You can do this on a group of people, so you don't
Okay.
need to tell one migration story. You can do this, that's a great question, because that's talking about the abstract versus the concrete. A personal story will be a little more abstract the way Hanley's story was, and you're going to have to convert it a little more to look at it as a geographer. And then versus if you look at a full group of people, you can tell about that.
Can we choose a migration story that we know of, but isn't in the text or that we haven't discussed in class?
Yeah, why don't you talk about it with either me or Mr. Beal when we start to talk about these, just to make sure we think through it all the way. But definitely, if you want to think more abstractly about this, we can already open to that.
Can we use like our parents if they have like a pretty good like a
Yeah.
migration?
Definitely, that's going more to personal. Well, we're going to be working on this in class.
Oh.
So right now, yeah, we're going to look at this over. We have established about a 3-day structure, including this class day, so 2 other class days. But once again, it's something we're all working on together. Yeah.